Quality, comfort, and grip at an affordable price. Whether it's our standard, pro, or elite socks, there's an option for everyone. Try a pair for yourself now at puregripsocks.com.
Trying to pick out a new pair of football boots but need to justify your choice by seeing how highly they rank in a tier list video? You've come to the right place. In today's video, using the tier list format, I will be ranking every readily available worldwide top-end football boot in S, A, B, C, and F tier. We're skipping D tier because if they're that bad, they might as well be an F anyways. Where I feel like I say this every time I make a video like this, but it is important to note, keep in mind that these rankings are based on my own personal experiences and opinions with these football boots from the perspective of having tried all of them. Where if you happen to have one of these football boots that I'm ranking a little bit lower than you personally agree with, you are totally valid in your opinion of that product. At the end of the day, personal preference is a huge factor when it comes to how much you're going to like or dislike a pair of football boots. Just keep in mind that these rankings are not necessarily gospel, and you can absolutely have a positive experience with any pair of football boots that I'll be talking about in today's video. And really quickly, before we get started, if you're interested in any of the boots we're going to discuss in today's video, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the links down below. If you enjoy the tier list format, drop a like on this one. And if you're not subscribed already and appreciate the unsugar-coated, unsponsored, brutally honest opinions on this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2025. The Adidas Copa Pure 3 Elite is an awesome choice for somebody that prioritizes softness and comfort. The Fusion Skin upper gives you a combination of soft but not overly thin calf leather in the forefoot that transitions pretty well seamlessly into a synthetic material through the midfoot. A nice deep central lacing system along with really good shaping makes for great out-of-the-box comfort. One of the most comfortable heel designs currently on the market, and the sole plate and stud pattern prioritizes flexibility and generally is just more traditional in terms of how it feels and performs, making for what is kind of the ultimate no-nonsense package. Therefore, the Copa Pure 3 Elite for me is A tier. The Nike Phantom series, made up of the low-cut GX2 and the mid-cut Luna 2, is exactly what you'd expect from a modern-day pair of control boots. It's an awesome choice for somebody that really likes that knitted upper feel, in that the grip knit material is basically just Flyknit with a grippy texture on the surface that gives it this sticky, soft silicone type of feel that legitimately does grip the ball more than just about any other football boot currently on the market. The off-centered lacing system gives you this really clean surface to control and even strike the ball. The boots as a whole are relatively comfortable, although personally I wish the toe box was a little bit wider. And the sole plate and stud pattern, not everybody's favorite, a carryover from the original Luna, and definitely more speed boot-esque in its qualities, at least when you're talking about the bladed FG stud pattern. But if you would prefer something a little bit more flexible and a little bit more traditional, the conical studs of the AG Pro variation are also a really good choice. For what they are, I still think it's one of the best performing control boots currently on the market. Therefore, the Nike Phantoms are A tier. The New Balance 442 version 2 Pro for a number of years has been one of the best value for money options on the market. However, recently what used to be a natural leather upper has gone full synthetic, where even though from a distance this still looks like a quilted leather material, in reality it's a synthetic that doesn't necessarily feel bad to the touch, but when you get these boots on your feet, it's just nowhere near the experience that we used to get from this product. It's perhaps the biggest downgrade of any football boot in 2025, and for $130 to $140 depending on the colorway, simply put, they are not worth it. For me, unfortunately, the 442 version 2 Pro with a full synthetic upper is F tier. If you want a synthetic football boot, there are just way better options. The Puma Ultra 5 Carbon might be the most technically impressive football boot currently on the market, with the main appeal, of course, being that full-length carbon fiber sole plate that looks absolutely fantastic. However, it might also be the biggest downfall of this football boot. For starters, it makes it very expensive at $290. They are one of the priciest inline football boots currently on the market. Also, even though it's carbon fiber, the boots as a whole are not particularly lightweight, in that almost every other top-end speed boot is lighter. That's not to say that they feel heavy, but the weight is definitely not impressive. But perhaps the biggest issue here is also its biggest strength, and that is how stiff this carbon fiber sole plate is, where on feet, this is arguably the stiffest football boot ever made, which at the end of the day is very much an acquired taste. Yes, you can feel the responsiveness and energy return from this carbon plate. It's the most effective carbon plate we've ever seen on a pair of football boots for that particular reason, but the stiffness I generally just find to be a little bit unpleasant and on the uncomfortable side of things, particularly under the foot in the forefoot and also in the heel, where there's just a little bit more pressure. The traction with this FG stud pattern is top notch. The lockdown and responsiveness is also fantastic, but again, that stiffness along with the extra weight to me makes these less appealing than so many other speed boot options. There are definitely certain people that will absolutely love these, which is why I can't rank them too low, but for me, the Ultra 5 Carbon cannot be higher than B tier. Let's get this one out of the way. The classic Adidas Copa Mandial that for the first time in a long time you can get in a bunch of different colorways and variants. It is a football boot that has stood the test of time for a reason. Truly one of the GOATs. The Copa Mandial is S tier. Not for everybody, obviously, especially in 2025, but without question, one of the best ever. Speaking of GOATs, what I personally think is the most comfortable football boot currently on the market that is not a special edition, the made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2 just features the softest kangaroo leather upper that money can buy, with phenomenal shaping, a sole plate and stud pattern that looks old school but is actually made from modern materials, which gives it a much more modern feel and a much lighter construction than a lot of people might expect. They're pricey at $280, but if comfort and leather is all you really want out of a pair of football boots, this is genuinely as good as it gets. The Morelia 2 Japan is S tier. Because of this logo, the Skechers SKX 1.5 might never be considered cool, but that does not take away from the fact that it is actually a pretty solid pair of football boots. Again, I talk about this whenever these come up. I do not condone Skechers effectively copying the Nike Phantom GT, which has since been discontinued, but that's effectively what this is, with some modifications that I think make it a little bit more comfortable and better fitting in general. They're not really that much cheaper than other top-end models, but because they're not popular at all, you can get these for in and around $100 on sale in almost every single colorway, where simply put, if you were a fan of the now discontinued Nike Phantom GT1 or GT2, the Skechers SKX 1.5 is the logical choice for the closest thing. It's easily a B tier football boot. The Umbro Velocita Matrix Pro is the most okay top-end speed boot that money can buy. However, because it retails for $275, you will not be buying them unless you stumble across them in a department store 6 months from now for about $40. The Pro Weave upper, while I think it looks really cool and is pretty technically impressive, feels just okay. It's not overly soft. It's not overly sock-like. It definitely leans in the more structured direction. And the surface of the upper has been left completely clear of any type of grippy element, meaning that it's just exposed knit, which on the ball is remarkably slippery, not really my cup of tea. The boots are okay in terms of weight, but again, nothing exceptional. And the sole plate and stud pattern is once again just all right compared to all the other speed boot options out there. At $275, I think you're out of your mind to buy these over other speed boot options, but as an overall product, They're, like I said, just okay. The Velocita Matrix Pro is C tier. The regular Adidas F50 Elite is a very popular pair of football boots right now, and for good reason. Similar to the OG from 2010, this is very much what I would classify as a no-nonsense pair of speed boots in that they fit well, they're comfortable, they're lightweight, they provide relatively aggressive traction, and they give you that raw barefoot feel with this thin synthetic upper, the twist being the micro texture on the surface that gives the material a little bit of grit on the ball that legitimately does provide some extra grip, preventing it from being overly slippery. You have the option of with laces or without, where obviously I think the lace variation is going to be the best in terms of objective performance characteristics, but if you're into the whole laceless thing, I think the laceless version is quite good, and I love the fact that Adidas no longer charges you a premium to remove the laces on the football boots, but as it is, if you just want a simple pair of speed boots, these are a fantastic choice. Therefore, the regular F50 Elite is A tier. The Under Armour Shadow Elite 3 has been one of the best surprises of 2025 so far, in the sense that we really haven't had anything all that good from Under Armour in quite some time. This changes that track record in the sense that this IntelliKnit upper feels fantastic. It strikes a nice balance of softness, giving you that sock-like sensation, but also isn't lacking in structural integrity in that when you tie the laces tight, your foot still feels very secure. It has this interesting ridge texture within the material itself that relates it a little bit to something along the lines of the Mercurial Superfly 5 from back in the day, which I know a lot of people are really big fans of, and it pairs it up with a carbon sole plate and super aggressive bladed studs that admittedly don't feel as crazy as it looks, and the sole plate, even though there is some visible carbon, isn't overly responsive, but as a whole, it's a very pleasant pair of football boots. Again, if you like that kind of sock-like speed boot sensation. It's worth noting that there is the pink Pit Viper variation that features a completely different cover on the surface of the upper that makes them significantly stiffer. They look cool, but I personally would not recommend buying that version. The ones with this graphic are definitely the way to go, and if you do choose to go in the Shadow Elite 3 direction, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. This for me is an A tier football boot. You could definitely argue that the Nike TMPO Legend 10 Elite is the most overhated football boot currently on the market. And the reason why I say that is objectively, these are actually pretty decent as long as you go into it with the expectation that they are not going to feel like past TMPOs. The Fly Touch Plus upper is genuinely pretty leather-like, although definitely on the thinner side, where I think the takeaway from the Legend 10 that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily expect is that they feel more speed boot-esque than you'd expect from something bearing the TMPO Legend name. There's also more grip to the surface of the upper than I think a lot of people might anticipate. The shaping of the boot is slimmer and lower volume in profile, relating them closer to the Mercurial series than, again, past TMPO models. They're also very lightweight, almost as light as most speed boots, and the sole plate and stud pattern, while on the more flexible side, is still pretty classic TMPO as far as the stud layout is concerned. For $240, they're not necessarily bad football boots, but I also don't think they're the best synthetic upper boots that you can get right now. Therefore, the TMPO Legend 10 Elite, for me at least, is B tier. The Saucony Scuetta is the new kid on the block that everybody wants to be friends with, and rightfully so. For a brand that you've never heard of, the Scuetta is a remarkably well-designed and refined product with excellent shaping and I think fantastic comfort for what you would probably expect from a pair of super thin speed boots. The BioTouch material in the forefoot really reminds me a lot of the heyday of the F50 Adizero with its hybrid touch upper back in 2014. The nice deep central lacing system and U-throat construction is refreshingly simple. The boots are comfortable, but also provide that barefoot touch on the ball, but also have nice overall responsiveness. And the sole plate and stud pattern with these longer blades really set itself apart from other speed boot options currently on the market. For the $200 retail price they're asking for these, they are incredible value value for money and a great option if you're looking for something in the speed category and just want to try something new. The Scuetta for me is A tier. The Umbro Tokco 5 Pro retails for $300, where if you're seeing this football boot for the first time ever right now, you're probably scratching your head at that fact, and I am too. As an overall product, with soft leather in the forefoot and midfoot, I actually think they fit and feel okay. It's by far the best Tokco model that Umbro have ever produced. Crazy to think that we're now 5 generations in. However, as an overall product, the price tag is nowhere near justified, and even if these retailed for half of $300, I still don't think there would be that many takers. Again, if you can find them deeply discounted at a department store and you have the option to try them on before you buy them, I think there might be a reason to get a pair, but as it stands right now at anywhere near $300, these probably just aren't worth your time. The Tokco 5 Pro, however, is still okay, therefore it's C tier. The Adidas Predator 25 might just be the most popular boot on the market right now, with the fold-over tongue FT variation definitely being the star of the show, or at least the focus of the majority of the marketing. But whether you get the version with the tongue, the version without the tongue, or even the laceless model if that's your thing, the final product is a really nice modern take on what the Predator line represents. The hybrid touch synthetic upper is definitely on the thinner side and maybe not as robust as a lot of people might expect given the way that these football boots look, but in general they blend right in with most modern football boots in terms of overall fit and feel. The rubber striking elements give you that extra grip that do allow for a sense of control, but also bite the ball really nicely when trying to take a curling free kick, which I really like, and again makes these stand out from other football boots currently on the market. They're a lot lighter than you might expect given their more traditional styling, and the sole plate and stud pattern is classic Adidas, where if you've worn one of their football boots basically since 2010, you have an idea of what to expect. These are popular for a reason, therefore the Predator 25 Elite is A tier. While unfortunately we're past the days of prime Messi, there's an argument to be made that the current Messi F50 Elite is the best football boot he's ever had throughout his entire career. This is a personal favorite of mine, and basically the F50 platform, which again is very much that no-nonsense speed boot style, exact same sole plate and stud pattern, very similar shaping, but it swaps out that thin fiber touch synthetic upper for a slightly thicker, more padded, dare I say more leather-like hybrid touch that is actually even more padded than what you're going to get from the Predator series, believe it or not. It also gives us that signature burrito style tongue, which has been a customization that has been exclusive to Messi for several years now available on his signature football boots that I think feel absolutely fantastic. And as a pair of speed boots that just give you that little bit of extra cushion and softness on the ball, I think these are absolutely fantastic. They're an extra $10 over a normal pair of F50s, which isn't ideal, but if you want that little bit of extra cushion, I think it's well worth it. For me, the Messi F50 Elite is S tier. The Puma Future 8 Ultimate might have had the worst launch for a new pair of football boots of all time. And for the record, I'm of the opinion that the boots are not to blame for that whole slipping situation, but there is no denying that unfortunately the Future 8 just isn't very good. And as far as top-end football boots go, I'd actually argue that they're somewhat unpleasant to wear, not something that you want to hear for a pair of football boots that retails for $240. They tried to do something cool and different that I will admit is pretty creative, but unfortunately the synthetic material for the upper is just so stiff and plasticky. The 3D touch pods that sit underneath do absolutely nothing for the feel on the ball other than just add more bulk. The shaping, I think they got absolutely all wrong. It's one of the most uncomfortable top-end football boots on the market. They're remarkably stiff with this new sole plate design in combination with the rigid plasticky upper, and they're also one of the heaviest top-end football football boots currently on the market. For $240, they are simply not worth it. And even at half price, there's just a bunch of other football boots that I would personally rather wear. The Future 8 Ultimate is the worst Future Puma have ever made, and for me is a pretty big failure as a top-end product. Therefore, it has to be F tier. The New Balance Tequila V4 Plus Pro Low is easily one of the most underrated football boots currently on the market. The hypo knit upper is soft, flexible, premium, and just gives you that nice sock-like sensation that became so popular in the world of football boots just 11 years ago. The off-centered lacing system gives it a little bit of a Nike CTR 360 vibe and generally just wraps your foot really nicely with the laces tied tight. I can appreciate the low-cut design. The overall weight of the product is very low, where again, they're technically classified as control boots, but they are very much speed boot light. The sole plate is more on the flexible side, but the stud pattern is very unique with these kind of half-length bladed studs that border the edges of the forefoot, giving you a little bit of additional grip when on the sides of your feet, something that I think would be particularly beneficial for somebody like a goalkeeper, even though I'm not really a big believer in the whole boots by position thing. And even though New Balance haven't really been producing them in mid-cut laceless form, they are still out there in older colorways on sale, and as a pair of laceless boots, they're pretty decent. The New Balance Tequila V4 Plus Pro Low is definitely one of those boots you might want to consider if you're on the market for something with a soft knitted upper. Therefore, it is A tier. The Skechers Razor 1.5 is, again, another pair of Skechers football boots that I think a lot of people recognize as being really good, but because it has a Skechers S on it, most people are never going to give them a shot. It's a speed boot that shares a lot of characteristics with some all-time favorites from the Nike Mercurial line, mainly the Vapor 11 sole plate and stud pattern, and the Tajin synthetic upper found on the Mercurial Vapor 10. Obviously, both of those elements aren't exactly like those football boots, but again, the inspiration, especially coming from a brand like Skechers, is quite clear. The boots as a whole are very lightweight. The sole plate is responsive. The touch on the ball is quite good. The fit and comfort is well above average for what we've come to expect in the speed category as well. And while at full retail, they might not have that much appeal because they're not very popular, you can again get these very deeply discounted, where for in and around $100 from a value for money perspective, they're going to be pretty tough to beat. If you can get past the logo, I think they're really good football boots. The Skechers Razor 1.5 is B tier. The Mizuno Morelia Neo series is what you get when a brand takes a base design concept and continues to tweak it just a little bit at a time over the span of about 15 years, where whether it's the Neo4 Beta, like I have here, with its one-piece upper construction, or the non-beta variation, which is my personal preference, that gives you the more traditional U-throat construction, you end up with a pair of leather speed boots that are pretty tough to criticize. Where I think it's impossible to say that any pair of football boots could be perfect, but in terms of what you could or would change about the Morelia Neo4, it's really, really difficult to say. If you're on the market for the best of the best as far as kangaroo leather speed boots go, while expensive, it's tough not to choose these. The Morelia Neo4 is S tier. The Puma Ultra 5 Ultimate might just be the most well-rounded speed boot currently on the market, where unlike the carbon variation, the regular Ultimate features a plastic sole plate that is still very responsive, but obviously a lot more flexible, and the choice that you'll see 99% of pros playing in the Puma Ultra make. It's just the better feeling football boot. You get the same stud pattern, which is super aggressive, providing plenty of bite on firm natural grass. The shaping and lockdown is top notch with this nice deep central lacing system. It has some grip on the surface of the upper that is actually very reminiscent of the grip knit you're going to find from the Nike brand, from both the Phantom as well as the Mercurial, with realistically the only criticism to be made about the Ultra 5 Ultimate being that they're not quite as light as the Mercs or the F50s, but that is not to say that they feel heavy on your feet. They're a little bit less expensive at retail, and because Puma have literally put them out in 100 different colorways since releasing, you can find a bunch of older colorways pretty deeply discounted, making them an excellent value for money choice. For me, the Ultra 5 Ultimate is just a fantastic, well-rounded pair of speed boots. It's A tier. The New Balance Furon V8 Elite is undeniably a great effort by New Balance to create a competitive pair of speed boots. They're lightweight, they provide really aggressive traction, the sole plate feels pretty responsive. I like the fact that it has an off-center lacing system, and the knitted upper that they've gone for here has that super thin feel while also maintaining a decent level of softness and structure. It's also less expensive than what you're going to find from the main options from Nike, Adidas, and Puma. However, I just can't find myself choosing these over the more popular alternatives, and honestly, some of the less popular ones as well. In other words, they're really good, but not really good enough, if that makes any sense. For me, the Furon V8 Elite is a great pair of football boots, but I have a hard time ranking them any higher than B tier. The Adidas F50 Plus is a super unique pair of football boots where, similar to the Ultra 5 Carbon, it's so different from everything else, it becomes a bit of an acquired taste, where right off the bat, the elephant in the room is that Adidas chose to make the F50 Plus exclusively as a laceless upper, which is one of those things that some people are just never going to go for, including myself. It's just not my cup of tea. But the appeal of this football boot is that double sole plate construction with the Light Strike Pro inserts in the forefoot that actually elevate the forefoot quite significantly, really giving you the sense of being on your toes. But the sole plate that is sandwiched on top and underneath makes it incredibly stiff and responsive, similar to the Ultra 5 Carbon, but I think in a way that feels much more pleasant and comfortable to actually play in. Don't get me wrong, they are incredibly stiff, especially in comparison to a normal pair of F50s, and given the fact that they retail for an extra $40 at 300 bucks over a standard F50 Elite, it's just one of those products that most people are never going to consider. But if you're into laceless boots and you want to try something that is just completely different from everything else, that gives you an incredible amount of underfoot responsiveness, the F50 Plus is a great product, and I'm really curious to see what Adidas is going to do with this technology moving forward. For me, the F50 Plus is A tier. The Nike Zoom Mercurial, available as the mid-cut Superfly 10 or the low-cut Vapor 16, remains one of the most popular football boots on the market for good reason. It is the gold standard in the speed boot category in terms of interesting tech that you can actually feel, where the Zoom air cushion in the forefoot and toe box area genuinely just feels so different from everything else in a way that I would argue is quite positive. The aggressive FG stud pattern is top notch, as we've come to expect from the Mercurial series, and the grip knit upper, being the main twist for this current generation, gives you tons of extra grip on the ball that we've really never seen before in the Mercurial series, which granted is going to be something that is heavily preference based. If you don't like having a lot of extra grip, then maybe the current Mercs aren't for you. But in terms of giving you that sense of control, just from the upper sticking to the ball more than it used to with past models, there's no denying that the grip knit definitely has its impact on the experience. They still fit tight, they're super lightweight, they're super responsive, they're everything you expect a pair of top-end Mercurials to be. Therefore, it's really difficult to criticize them and rank them any lower than S tier. If you've never seen these until just now, my apologies for the nightmares that may occur, but the Under Armour Magnetico Elite 4 is just a disaster of a pair of football boots. Not only are they aesthetically, in my opinion at least, one of the ugliest designs we've ever seen, especially in this peach and green colorway, but the fit and feel of this boot, while I understand what they were trying to do, it's just bulky and cumbersome, and they're heavy and they're expensive, and there's just nothing about it that at the end of the day feels good on your feet or feels good on the ball. It's one of those products that as a pair of top-end football boots, we as consumers should just expect more. Therefore, the Magnetico 4 Elite is quite easily F tier. Another personal favorite of mine, the Adidas Copa Icon 2, is such fantastic value for money. At $180, it is effectively a leather F50 Adizero in that you get this soft calfskin leather in the forefoot that transitions into a decently soft synthetic leather material through the midfoot, a central lacing system with a traditional U-throat construction, a heel design that is very similar to that of the Copa Pure 3, which I think is incredibly comfortable, great overall shaping, and a sole plate that is very sprint frame-esque, again relating it to the F50, not to mention it's also an FG AG stud pattern, even though it's technically the AG stud pattern if you buy any of the inline Adidas products. Nonetheless, the fact that you can use this on both firm natural grass and artificial grass playing surfaces while still maintaining your warranty with the Adidas brand is a huge plus, with the only real downside being that Adidas have not put them out in enough colorways yet. If you want something that is lightweight but also leather that isn't going to break the bank, the Copa Icon 2 is a fantastic option. It's quite easily A tier. The Puma King Ultimate is effectively the less appealing brother of the TMPO Legend 10, which is probably not the best place to be, and it explains the lack of popularity around this football boot. The K-Better synthetic upper has some leather-like characteristics, but at the end of the day, it's a synthetic Puma King model for $220 that doesn't feel overly premium. The fit and comfort is just okay, which is not good enough for this style of football boot, and the sole plate and stud pattern, while traditional and true to the King, is fairly unexceptional and is drawing nobody to this particular product. It also doesn't help that I actually think the takedown model King Pro at $120 is actually the better feeling football boot and has a more convincing synthetic leather upper. So while not a bad product overall, it's just not one that out of all the top end options out there that I think most people, given the opportunity to try them all, would ever say the King Ultimate is the best of the bunch. Therefore, it's C tier. The Mizuno Alpha 2 is available in two different variants that are incredibly far apart from each other in price, but very similar to each other when it comes to fit, feel, and performance, where straight up, the Made in Japan model at $320 probably isn't worth your time, but the Elite version at $180 might just be the best speed boot currently on the market. And that's not to say that the Japan one also isn't that. It's very good. I just don't think it's worth the extra premium. However, what you're getting from the Alpha 2 is a lightweight, aggressive traction, responsive pair of speed boots with one key feature that really sets it apart from everything else on the market, and that is that this thin synthetic upper that gives you that premium barefoot feel is lined entirely in this zero glide material, which on the original Alpha was only found on the insole and the heel liner. Now it's on the inside of the entire upper, which gives you this connected sensation to the football boots that I don't think I've experienced since the early days of the Mercurial Superfly series, but without the bleeding and discomfort that came along with those. For $180, not only is it the least expensive top-end speed boot on the market, but from a performance standpoint, it might just be the very best. Therefore, the Alpha 2 is without question S tier. The New Balance 442 version 2 Elite is a bit of a weird football boot in terms of the combination of features, but I think a great example of how to do a synthetic leather upper product, in that it does look leather from a distance, but up close it's very much a synthetic, but one that is super soft, definitely on the thinner side, but still has that little bit of plushness to it. The shaping and fit, New Balance have absolutely nailed, and because it's from New Balance, you have the option of regular as well as wide fit variations, which is great. It features a sole plate and stud pattern that carries over from the 442 Pro, which feels very much much like what you'd expect from a pair of high-end football boots. And interestingly enough, this is actually tied for basically the lightest football boot currently on the market at $160 full retail, where again, because these are not the most popular, you can get them on sale in older colorways for in and around $100. For that kind of money, the value for money is incredible, and therefore the New Balance 442 version 2 Elite is A tier.